Welcome back, Chum Guzzlers. It is your third week of Grizzly May, and this week we're checking out Claws from 1977, directed by Robert E. Pearson and Richard Bansback. So, as always with this month, we're going to start off with a little bit of trivia about this movie. There's really only one piece that I could find on IMDb, and even a Google search didn't really gather any more results other than this one, basically. So, this was re-released in 1978 in Canada and Mexico as Grizzly 2, kind of like Day of the Animals, in an effort to capitalize on the success of another similarly themed grizzly bear film a year before called Grizzly, which had performed exceptionally well worldwide. Claws is oftentimes mistaken as the sequel to Grizzly because of its re-release title, but has no connection to the film nor any connection to the real infamous lost sequel, Predator the Concert, aka Grizzly 2, which of course I am talking about over on Patreon. So if you want to support the podcast, you can go to patreon.com/bucketofchum. Each month I'm doing an exclusive episode over there, and depending on where you live, it's either $2 or $3 a month, so it's not really that much. And if you can't do that, I would really appreciate a rating or a review wherever it is you listen to your podcast. And if you're listening or watching on YouTube, if you could like, subscribe, share the video, comment down below, and I'll try and respond to you. But any and all that stuff greatly helps the podcast, and it's also greatly appreciated. So as I mentioned, this is the second movie to also be advertised as a Grizzly sequel in some markets. Clearly it's not. But let's just get right into the Letterboxd plot synopsis. A raging grizzly bear taking revenge on man. A grizzly bear who was wounded by 3 hunters in 1 year goes on a killing spree in the woods, taking revenge on humans as a whole. Jason and Chris Monroe, an estranged husband and wife, pursue the bear after it kills their only son, Buck. That's a very loose synopsis of this movie. Like, it's not totally inaccurate, but once we get into the plot, you can kind of see why it's not. I mean, Chris or Chrissy, the wife, she doesn't really pursue the bear that much, so I don't really know why they're labeling it like that, but either way, this has an average rating of 2.9 stars on Letterboxd, which I believe is the highest rated movie so far, I believe, which is kind of surprising. I would have thought maybe Grizzly had higher. I thought it was only like 2.5 or maybe, but I feel like this is the highest one of the month so far. For poster expectations, this is, it has like a giant Native American face behind a bear attacking someone. Again, one of these like beautifully 1970s hand-painted posters. So this movie, I'm kind of expecting more of like an epic adventure movie and maybe not so much gore as we saw in Grizzly, and maybe a lot more kind of practical animal effects like we saw in Day of the Animals. So again, I think this is kind of going to be like some middle ground between those two movies. But without further ado, it is time to get raw with the paw of the claws, and let's dive in. And a quick note, actually, I watched this on YouTube and the quality wasn't great. And as I mentioned earlier, there's not a lot of info on this movie, so like character names and certain scenes, it was really hard to see like what was going on. So just keep that in mind. But this is available on YouTube if you do want to watch it. I'll try and remember to leave a link down below so you can check it out for yourselves. So the movie starts off right away, and we see a grizzly bear walking with like this yellow or sepia tone kind of shading going on. And then we see two bears fighting in the woods, and at one point the bear knocks the camera over, so this was obviously not intentional, but I guess they were actually filming some bears, like real bears, which is great. And it seems like some dudes are betting on the bears and whatnot, and then they shoot and kill one of the bears. And then the other one, I guess they manage to wound it, but they don't actually kill it, and it ends up getting away. And then we go over to Jason and his wife, Chris, and she says she's happy to be married to a logger because they get free wood. Now, this movie would like to let me believe that she's talking about firewood, but I would like to believe she's talking about his penis. So we go back to the hunters who say they should track the injured bear down, but then they ultimately decide not to for some reason. And then they just leave and get off the road. So they're clearly hunting illegally, like they're poachers, basically. And I think one of them even mentions that he's a guide. So, like, he's a licensed guide in this wooded area or whatever. Clearly not a very fucking honorable one. And then Jason and his wife drive past these people getting into their van, and they're like singing along obnoxiously in their truck. And then their truck starts to smoke and breaks down and comes to a complete stop. So Jason decides that he is going to like hitchhike his way back to town, and Chris is going to wait in the truck and says she'll like send somebody if she notices anybody driving by. The van of poachers even pass by Jason, but they just completely ignore him while he waves down for help or whatever. And then we just kind of see the bear stalking him in the woods for a bit, and then it finally attacks him. And this is like Day of the Animals meets Grizzly right here. So it's like quick shots, and then some of the wide shots are just a bear like tearing a dummy apart. Which, I mean, I love that stuff. Like, that's the kind of stuff that we're here for. So I really like that. Would have liked to have seen a little bit more of it, but it was still pretty entertaining. And then it's just like close-ups of like Jason's hands all bloodied and whatnot. And then after this, we just get like a bunch of texts from like various dates and like typewriter sounds. So like obviously some sort of reports on the following incidences. But basically, this takes place in Admiralty. Oh my God, I can't even talk. Admiralty, Alaska, on July 27th, and then says a logger was attacked by a bear. So this is about Jason. And then the next text we see is from September 2nd, and 2 people are killed, 1 seriously injured, and that a giant grizzly has turned into a giant rogue killer. And then the next one is from November 14th. So 2 hikers are killed, and people lose the trail of the bear in some snow, so the hunt is called off. Would have been kind of cool to see some of these, but I guess it's not ultimately that important. And then the last piece of text that we see says that it's now 5 years later, and the attacks have started up again by what loggers are calling Satan Bear. Which someone make that movie. I would totally watch a fucking movie about Satan taking over a bear and, you know, fighting things with like bear powers and magic Satan powers. I don't know, I just think that'd be pretty fucking cool. And then we see that Jason is in bed, and he is kind of having like dreams and flashbacks about his son, and I guess like him and his wife are divorced. So I guess he became so obsessed with like trying to find this bear, or like he couldn't sleep because of it. So basically, at the end of the day, him and Chrissy get fucking divorced. He's upset. She ends up taking the son and moving into town. And, like, this is the kind of shit that's just haunting his dreams now. He wakes up and goes outside, and I guess he's living with this other man, Henry, who's, like, a Native American. I thought, like, at the beginning and for most of this movie that it was his dad. I guess it's not his dad, but basically he kind of wakes up Jason from, like, this weird dream state that he's in. And we kind of get this a lot throughout the movie where, like, we get, like, these flashback kind of dream sequences sort of throughout. I don't know, it's very strange. But Jason just keeps insisting to Henry that he's going to find this bear and he's going to kill it, and, like, that'll make him sleep again, hopefully. And then we see the commissioner. That's the character's name. I think his name is Ben, but, like, when you look it up on IMDb, it just says that he's commissioner. But I'm pretty sure his name is Ben. And he's checking on some kids that are swimming in a closed-off area. So he goes and drives up, and then this hippie comes running out of a van, and he's like, hey, man, we didn't, like, see the signs, or, like, we didn't really believe them. We didn't think there'd be actually a bear. But now there's, like, a bear in my truck, man, and it's, like, freaking out. And so the commissioner goes and checks this out, and there's just, like, this cub in the back of this guy's truck just having a grand old time. It's just hilarious that this guy was, like, totally freaked out by it. I mean, if Mama Bear was around, I would be pretty fucking concerned. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just a little cub. It's totally fine. And the commissioner just, like, kind of laughs this off. Then we see a Boy Scout troop and with their scoutmaster, Henry, setting up tents and whatnot. And then he reminds the kids to, like, sing out when they're leaving camp. So basically just let them know that they're leaving. Because some kids have just been kind of, like, coming and going. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty dumb. You're in the middle of the woods and you're just leaving without telling anybody. Oh, this is why kids are dumb. This is why you can't do anything with them. And then as it starts to get darker, the Scoutmaster reminds the kids to clean up the food smells so they don't get any unwanted visitors. Spoiler alert, doesn't fucking work. And then when it's dark, some kids think they see a bear approaching. So Henry goes and grabs his gun and he gets ready to shoot it. But then the kids are like, whoa, no, it's just us or whatever. And then this is where the Scoutmaster has a flashback. So he has a flashback of him in an office talking to Ben, I think, about, like, the bear attacks. And then Bucky's mom, so Bucky is Jason and Chrissy's son. So Chrissy comes into the room, and so now her and, it's Howard. Howard is the Scoutmaster. Right, Howard is the Scoutmaster, Henry is Jason's not dad or whatever. So yeah, Howard and Chrissy are now together, and then of course, like, Ben is like, hey, do you think this is really such a good idea coming between, like, this father and son or whatever? And Howard's just like, oh, but we're happy, blah, 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 who cares? But yeah, Chrissy comes in and says, like, that Bucky's really excited about this camp out or whatever. But me spider senses are tingling and saying that this is not going to be a good idea. And then this is where Ben starts talking about that he insists that it's some sort of devil bear, something not natural, but Howard says like it's just a rogue bear, nothing crazy. And then we go back to nighttime with the camping trip, and Howard like calls the boys over, kind of gives them shit for this or whatever, and then tells them to start packing it in for the night, which I thought everybody was already doing anyways, but I guess not. And then some of the kids are still awake, and they're kind of arguing over like, oh, you were more scared than I was, blah blah blah. And then one of them wakes up later on and tells Howard that he needs to make a nature call. And when he walks away, he says something is coming for him, and I don't know what word they were trying to say. It was like some native word that they basically used to describe this bear or like evil spirit that's in this bear. But basically, he's like, yeah, no, there's something coming for me. And everybody thinks he's joking. But then we see the bear, and Howard starts shooting at it, but then he gets knocked out by the bear. This was all really hard to see because, like I said, the version I watched on YouTube was like pretty dark and kind of pixelated. So it looked okay, but again, like it was really hard to see kind of what was going on. But Howard tells the boys to like be calm or whatever, like right before the bear knocks him out. But then the bear just starts like tearing away at some of the tents. And it looks like the bear like drags out one of the kids in a sleeping bag or something and then like kind of starts walking off with it. But then later on we go to the hospital and Howard is in there with the commissioner and he's talking with the cop or something, and they say that they don't think Bucky is going to make it. So I guess the kid that we saw in the sleeping bag was Bucky, but again, it was really hard to see kind of what was happening. And then Howard goes into details about like how many bullets like he put in the bear and whatnot. And then he starts leaving, telling the commissioner that like he has a lot of parents to talk to and whatnot. And then Chrissy walks in and he apologizes. And then we get another flashback, and it's basically her and him talking about how she doesn't really want Bucky going on this trip, but he's like, no, it'll be fine. I promise to protect him and everything will be okay. Well, then we go to the present day, and clearly that didn't fucking happen, and she's pretty upset about it. And outside of the hospital, Jason and Henry are there, and I guess Henry kind of gives Jason the news that, like, it's not really looking good for Bucky, and they should go and drink whiskey about it. Because, again, it's the fucking 70s, so they're like, hey, there's a problem, let's go fucking drink whiskey, and that'll solve everything. And then we get another fucking flashback, because we haven't had enough already in the last 15 minutes. And so Jason has this flashback of him and Bucky roasting clams on the beach or something. And then Chrissy comes up to like take Bucky away because like this is while they're divorced or whatever. And then Bucky was all like, oh, this is so nice. It's just like old times and blah, blah, blah. And then like him and his mother just end up kind of walking away. So I guess this is just to kind of show that Jason still loves his son and he's upset about this. We didn't really need this. I understand it's just kind of here to show that, like, you know, Jason has obviously got a bond with his son, but, like, there's too many goddamn flashbacks in too short of a time so far. The next day, Ben is being questioned by a bunch of reporters walking down the street, and then, like, they keep asking if the attacks were done by, like, a devil bear or something, and if it's, like, the work of this old Native American legend that they keep talking about. And again, they call it by the name that I just can't understand what they're saying. And then one of the reporters starts to like kind of make light of the situation, saying it's like, hey, it's not every day that, you know, a grizzly comes and takes a little kitty around. So Commissioner obviously doesn't take this well and punches him right in his dumb fucking face. And then he's like, oh, you don't need to get physical about it. And I'm like, well, you're kind of a dumbass. So I think he kind of did. You kind of deserve to be punched in the fucking face. I think he got off easy, to be perfectly honest, but that's just me. And then later on, Ben is talking to one of the guides who was one of the hunters who shot the bear at the beginning of the movie, and he suspects that he's basically been hunting illegally this whole time, but he has nothing to really prove it. And then there's other people there saying that they're going to capture the bear and instead of killing it. And they seem confident of it, but obviously Ben is pretty fucking skeptical of this. And then they also say that the bear seems to have a hatred for people, and it's it's very likely that they're going to attack someone in town at some point. And I think these people are from like a university or something, because they talked earlier about bringing in some people with like fancy scientific instruments to track this thing down. So I guess they finally brought in some like smarty pants to try and find this thing. And Ben asks them if they've considered the old stories and like maybe this isn't just a bear, but like naturally they all dismiss this as just like stories. Because, like, wherever you go and whenever there's a killer animal, there's always stories about, like, spirits or, like, whatever kind of attached to this sort of phenomenon. And then basically through some questioning, the commissioner figures out that this guy, who's the guide, was basically hunting illegally, because he kind of asks him, he's like, oh, were you hunting a bear like maybe 5 years ago and injured it and then never actually tracked it down or whatever? And he doesn't, the guy just kind of stands there, doesn't say anything, so it basically confirms what the commissioner has been thinking all along. Then it's nighttime and some hunters are talking about hunting the bear. They're basically the hooligans from like Grizzly or Grizzly 2, who like are just a bunch of drunken fuckwits who think they're hot shit and they're gonna hunt this bear down. But ultimately, they have no idea what they're fucking doing, and they have no idea what they're in for. And there's a cop with them there for a little bit who talks to them, but then he just kind of leaves shortly after. And then as he's driving down the road, he stops and he calls in on the radio that he thinks he sees something. So he gets out of the car to go and investigate, and then he comes across like a bear cub and a fawn just playing with each other. Fucking adorable. And he just kind of laughs this off. He's like, ha, what a lovely thing that I have just seen. And then as he heads back to his car, he's attacked by the fucking bear and killed. We just kind of hear him dying and then like see his bloody hand being dragged off. So again, we don't really see a lot. It's just kind of a lot of buildup. But, you know, it's still fine. It's effective. It works. It's daytime now, and Chrissy pulls up to Jason's place, and she's greeted by Henry outside. And he tells Chrissy he's sorry about Bucky and all that, and how he remembers when she was here, she made this a home, or blah, 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 some bullshit like that. And then she asks where Jason is and how he's doing. And then Henry says, like, he knows deep down that, like, Jason is not doing well, but he's definitely going to hunt that bear. But if he does, he's not going to be coming back. It'll be like the last thing that he does. And so Jason comes out and Henry leaves these two to it. And then we flash back again. And then it's Chrissy slow-mo running in a field, jumping into Jason's arms and kissing him and saying how happy they are and blah, blah, blah. Sappy, happy crap. We really didn't need this one, especially. Like, this is just a really dumb flashback. I don't know why they even included this. There were too many flashbacks to begin with. There's also a lot of slow-mo in the movie that we also ultimately really, really, really don't need. And especially this one. Like, I'm like, this is just complete nonsense. I'm like, why is this here? We already know that they were married and happy. Like, we didn't need a flashback fucking telling us this. And especially such a short one. Like, I felt like this was just here to, like, pad out the runtime or something, which, you all know I'm a big fan of. But anyways, we snap back to present day and argue, and, like, Chrissy and Jason argue, like, how they're both sad over Bucky. Yeah, these two definitely don't love each other anymore. And then, like, Chrissy begs Jason to tell her that it's not her fault. And I'm like, well, I mean, technically it's not, but, like, it also kind of is, because you let Bucky, or you let Howard take Bucky out on this camping trip, whereas, like, Jason probably wouldn't have let that happen, but I don't know. I guess it's all semantics at this point, but it's like, I don't know. Like, she came here looking for validation, and I'm just like, well, what are you kind of expecting? Like, this probably isn't the time or place for this. Like, you need to start working on some other shit here. And then, of course, Jason says that if he had just gone after the bear, like, the year before, then, like, none of this would have happened. And then Chrissy says he'll die, too, like, if he goes after it, and he argues that, like, he's been dead for the last 5 years, and basically, he's still going after the bear. So yeah, this man's just apparently been dead inside for 5 years. Wowee. And then we go back with the commissioner and our university hunters who are setting up a live bait trap. And then they have like a motion tracker radio thing kind of setting up that's basically going to warn them when the bear is close to or in this trap. I guess that's my basic understanding of it. Again, some of this was like kind of hard to see and understand with the version that I watched, so... But yeah, I think that's kind of like the basic setup that they have. And then the guide from earlier is also there kind of helping them set this up. And Ben, the commissioner, gives him shit for like, well, you know, if you were really, like, really knew what you were fucking doing, you would at least have some blinds, like hunting blinds set up in the tree. So that way, if the bear does get away, there's at least people around that can like shoot at it if it doesn't go after this live bait trap. But again, these people are really insistent on capturing this thing alive. And I'm just like, it's been killing people for like 5 fucking years. Nobody's been able to track it and find it. And you think that all of a sudden you're just going to take it alive for the most part? I'm like, listen, in reality, in the real world, yes, we should be capturing it. In movie world, where things are really fucked up and this is probably some sort of like vengeful spirit or something, maybe we should fucking kill it. But No, they're like, no, science, blah, blah, blah. We got to try and fucking study it or some shit. And so later that night, the university hunters, they're waiting in a cabin, and like their radio starts going off, telling them that the bear is going after this pig. It beeps away, and so they immediately call the commissioner and tell the person on the line to tell him that they've caught the bear, which like they haven't yet. They like haven't visually seen this. They're just like, oh, our machine beeps, so we must have it. A little bit fucking premature there, boys, but yeah. But yeah, anyways, the bear just comes crashing through the fucking window and murders everybody in the cabin. And this was like a taxidermied bear that they used coming through the window. And again, this is where they kind of use some of the slow motion where it sort of works here a little bit, but like again, kind of not really. And we kind of just see some like close-ups of their faces, and like that's it. We don't really see much in the way of carnage going on. Ben and Chrissy are, I'm guessing, at Chrissy's place or something, and they're talking about like her and Jason's relationship and how she needs to go talk to Howard to put him at ease because he still feels really guilty. And she's like, no, I just can't bring myself to do it, even though I don't blame him. And I'm like, well, maybe you should tell him that. That might help him a bit, but no, what the fuck do I know? And then she tells Ben to go and convince Jason to not go after the bear. But then Ben is like, well, if there's anybody that can kill the bear, it's probably him. I'm like, fuck, okay. And the phone rings. It's for the commissioner, so he picks it up. And, like, this is basically the phone call telling him that, like, oh, yeah, they've captured the bear or whatever. And then he tells somebody on the other line to have somebody bring Jason into his office, and then he just kind of leaves without saying anything to Chrissy. I'm like, I don't know if she knew or what was happening on the other end of the phone, but he just like kind of leaves. It's kind of like in movies when people just hang up the phone without saying goodbye. Like he just literally does this in person. It's like, well, this visit's over. I'm done now. I'm leaving. Wow, fucking rude. So the commissioner, Ben, and Jason go to the cabin with Henry, and they start calling out for the hunters, but obviously nobody answers. They go inside, and as soon as they open the door, like a body drops down from the ceiling like we're in a fucking slasher movie. And then we kind of just look around the cabin, and we just see all of the bodies bloodied up. So yeah, all these men are dead. And then Henry says, like, this is the work of Kushkara. Again, it's something like that, Kushkara or something like that. That's the word they keep using to describe this spirit devil bear or whatever. And then Ben looks at Jason and asks for a favor, but Jason says like he doesn't owe him any favors or something, and that he tried to tell him about the rogue bear like a year ago, and he just kind of laughed at him. And then Ben's like, well, I'm not laughing now. And I'm like, well, fuck, maybe you should have listened to him before, or like the previous 4 years that you kept having these attacks, you dumbass. But Jason insists that he knows where the bear is, and then the commissioner insists on like going with him to track it down. But Jason says like, oh no, you're too old. But Ben then says that like Jason is just worried that somebody else is going to kill the bear before he does. That's why he wants to go alone. But eventually he agrees, and he's going to go with Howard as well. So like there's going to be 4 of them going out searching for this bear. And then Jason also says that like he knows something about this bear that most people don't, and that this bear thinks. And then like Ben asks like if he really believes those like Kush blah blah stories. And Jason says like he doesn't know why the bear thinks, he just does. We don't really explore this any further other than this conversation, really. I don't know if it's because like Jason survived the attack, so like they have some sort of connection. That might be the route that they're trying to go with this, but it's not really made incredibly clear. But that's kind of the only thing I can take from that. That's the only thing I can guess. But yeah, eventually Jason agrees to let the commissioner come, but he says like if he falls, like he's not coming back for him. He's not going to fucking rescue him or anything. So the next day, Henry, Ben, Jason, and Howard go searching for the bear. They find some bear tracks in the sand by the river, and then they've also got like helicopters kind of searching around, so like periodically they'll call into the helicopters to like ask them to drop supplies off, or if they've seen the bear or anything like that. And then we see some beaver in this movie. Yeah. No, I just mean like animal beavers are just making a dam. That's just kind of all we see, but yeah. And then Henry spots a raven and says it's a good sign. And I'm like, I would beg to fucking differ, because every time we see birds in these movies, they're there to fuck up the day. But Henry says it's a good sign because he's part of a raven tribe and not a bear tribe. And then he starts taking point as they start walking away again. And then they end up eventually spotting a couple of bears, but it's obviously not any of the ones that they're looking for. The helicopter calls into the commissioner and says that they haven't spotted any bears on their patrols and that they're going to head back for the day. So they stop for a bit, and Henry is chatting with Ben and says he's concerned about Henry. But I'm pretty sure, like, he might just be sort of being racist because, like, Henry's just kind of doing, like, a Native American chant across the river. Which I'm like, granted, like, when you just abruptly cut to that, it seems weird, but I'm just like, well, no, he's probably just doing some ceremonial thing. Like, I don't know. There's nothing really to say that, like, oh, yeah, he's out of his mind. He's lost it. I would kind of argue that all of you have lost it at this point, but that's just me. Back in town, Chrissy is talking to the chopper pilot and tells her that, like, there's a big storm moving in. And then they also say that, like, the governor has even ordered them out of the woods, but they just ignored the call or whatever. They don't even, like, show that happening on camera at all. Like, we just overhear this from the pilot, basically, which I don't know, it was just kind of a weird choice. But yeah, he gets into the chopper to go and, like, drop off supplies for them, I guess. And our hunters just keep moving forward, and they're heading for, like, the top of a mountain. And then Henry has a vision of some natives in the water. And I guess later on they kind of explain this as, like, the Wailing Women. I don't know exactly what it means because I feel like we don't fully explore what this is. Yeah, I feel like we could have explored this a little bit better. And then at one point, Henry just starts, like, wandering off from the group without anybody noticing. And then he sees, like, mountain goats appear before him, and they, like, clash antlers, and, like, the noise, like, makes him squint. And then, again, he keeps seeing visions of these Native American women and other animals, and it's like he's having a fucking bad acid trip or something. And then he eventually falls down a hill, and the others hear him scream, and then finally run to go and help him. And then Jason climbs down with a rope, and Howard tells him to go to hell as he's helping him. I don't understand. Like, I know they hate each other, but it's like, is this really the time for this? Like, you're literally helping an old man at the bottom of a hill, and you're like, fuck you, no, fuck you. Like, I don't know what they're doing here. I don't understand this. And then that night as they camp, Jason tells them, like, Henry has been seeing the Wailing Women. And then Ben gives some background on what the Kush Kara, or whatever it is. And basically, it's an evil spirit that can take the form of any animals and get revenge on people for their shitty misdeeds, more or less. Again, they don't fully explore this, and I kind of wish that they had explored this a little bit more, but this is kind of all, like, the only explanation we get for this. Howard and Jason then argue about Chrissy, and Ben says, like, this isn't the time or place, and I'm like, yeah, I fucking agree with that. Like, really not. Like, you have much bigger problems on your hands right now. But they do anyways, and, like, Howard says, like, he wishes the bear had mauled him instead of Bucky. And then Howard asks, like, how Jason can be considered, like, such a great bear hunter since they've been out here for apparently a week now, and, like, they haven't seen the bear at all. But Jason says that he has found the bear, or more likely the bear has found them and has been following them for the last, like, 2 days. Oh, and then, like, that 2 people should be staying up at night keeping watch. And I'm like, well, thanks for sharing with the fucking class there, Jason. I'm like, that probably would have been great information for the rest of your team to know. That, like, hell yeah, hey, by the way, there's a bear tracking us right now for 2 fucking days. I'm like, you just gonna sit on this information until you get into an argument? Like, what are we doing here? Like, I understand that Jason wants to be the one to kill the bear, but, like, again, this isn't really conducive to your mission at the same time. Like, you're just putting other people at risk because you're kind of an asshole, I guess. Maybe you have PTSD, but you're still being an asshole at the end of the day. And then we see that Henry has another vision while, like, Jason and Howard are arguing, and he sees the Wailing Women, I guess, and he kind of smiles and then wanders off again without telling anybody. So, okay, maybe Ben was on to something about Henry being a little bit off here, because, yeah, he's seeing shit and wandering off without telling people. I'm like, that's kind of a fucking problem. And he yells for them to, like, wait, he's coming. Like, he's yelling at the Wailing Women to say, like, he's coming. But then he just ends up walking right into the bear and dies. So I don't know if they're trying to suggest that, like, the bear is possessed by a spirit and, like, this spirit was manipulating Henry or something. I don't particularly know. Like, I don't really understand what was going on. Again, I would have liked to have seen and heard, like, more of an explanation for all this other nonsense going on. And naturally, the other three didn't notice that he was gone, or like they don't even know when he left, and they didn't hear him screaming or anything. So, because, oh yeah, they're like, oh yeah, because it was raining so hard. I'm like, we didn't see it raining at all, but apparently that's why they couldn't hear him scream, because it was pissing rain, even though we don't see it or hear it for ourselves. But we're just gonna have to take their word for it, apparently. And Jason insists that like there's little chance of finding him because like he's old and tired. So Jason's like, okay, I'm gonna go ahead and you guys follow me later on, and I'm gonna go see if I can find him or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of seems like a terrible idea, but yeah, go for it. And then Jason eventually comes across some blood on a rock, and then he keeps trekking on, and then he yells for the bear to like come for him, and that he's gonna kill him or whatever. And we just see some footage of like the bear waving. Like, Jason doesn't see this. Like, this is purely just for the audience, but it's just kind of funny. It's like, it's not really being menacing because it looks like the bear's just like kind of waving at Jason, like kind of taunting him. So I thought that was pretty funny, but I think it was supposed to be a little bit more menacing than they were coming across with. But eventually they do find Henry's body, and Jason says that he'll lay him to rest properly after this is all over with. And then Howard says that he's going to take his chances. So he's going to go back down the trail and go hide in a tree and wait for the bear. And if he doesn't see anything, then he's going to go back to a cabin and wait for them. Why? I don't fucking know. There's not really much of an explanation here. I guess Howard's just kind of done with everybody's shit at this point, which, I mean, fair. Like, Jason's fucking arguing about shit. I mean, Howard's also kind of arguing about shit, so, I mean, whatever. I guess they're all just kind of done with each other. So Ben and Jason push forward in the snow. Howard finds a tree to wait in, and the bear eventually finds him. And while I guess grizzlies can't climb trees, I know not all bears can. There's certain ones I can't. I didn't look this up. I'm not 100% sure, but I'm just going to take their word on it that the grizzly can't climb trees. But what it can do is apparently knock this fucking tree over, because it just shakes the tree so goddamn much that this thing ends up tipping over. Howard falls out. He's kind of just left with a pistol for a bit. And then he looks over for a second and he finds his rifle. And he goes over to get it, but the bear attacks him from the side, ultimately killing him. Again, we don't really see much. We kind of just see like the bear kind of come in from the side, swipe him down, and then we just go back with Ben and Jason. And Ben and Jason are basically still just trying to push their way up this mountain. And then in town, Chrissy and the pilot are at like a ranger station or maybe the airport or something like that. And the person on the radio is saying that like they don't have any eyes or like they don't have any idea where the men are at this point. And then Chrissy is then suddenly called to go to the hospital. So she arrives and Bucky's like all bandaged up in bed, but the doctor says that he's going to be all right. And then Bucky kind of comes to for a second and just says that he wants his dad. And then Chrissy just starts bawling her eyes out. Probably she's upset, like, well, I could have just stayed home then if you didn't fucking want me. And then we see Jason and Ben hiking along, and then they finally stop for a bit, and then Ben says that, like, Jason was right. He's, like, just too old and tired for this. But they kind of just stop for a bit, and then, like, Jason just kind of encourages them on, and then they just end up kind of hiking on. And then they do find some bear tracks. They follow them and then find the bear. And so Jason goes to take a shot at it, but they're on like an icy slope, I guess. So like the recoil from the gun makes them kind of both go stumbling down this fucking hill. But when they get to the bottom and like finally stop rolling, Ben is hurt. And so Jason tells him to wait while he goes to get his bag or whatever. We go back to the radio station or ranger station, airport. Don't know where we are, somewhere like that. And Jason calls them, but the signal is pretty weak. And then the pilot says that he's going to go and look for them and tells the operator to, like, keep trying to get in contact with them so he can get, like, a better idea of, like, what their location is. Jason returns to Ben, starts, like, patching him up. And the pilot is caught up in some storm or something, and he, like, barely has any visibility. And the operator, again, just keeps trying to talk to them, trying to get their location, but the signal is still weak. But eventually they do get through, and Jason tells the pilot to get above the clouds and get them before the storm starts like closing in on them. And then they keep talking back and forth, and the pilot eventually reaches them. And so he lands, and Jason brings Ben over to the chopper, and then the pilot insists that Jason get in with them, but he's like, no, I'm still going after this bear, I'm still going to kill it. And like, obviously, the pilot doesn't really have time to argue with him about this, like, he's probably limited on fuel, and also he has an injured man that he needs to get to the hospital. So he ends up taking off, and then he goes and takes Ben to the airport where there's an ambulance waiting for him. And then Chrissy also meets them there. And the pilot tells her that, like, Jason is still up there. And she's like, oh, you left him up there to die. And I'm like, bitch, no. Like, he had to take Ben to the goddamn hospital. Like, he didn't have time to sit there and argue with him over all this fucking bullshit. But then she insists on the pilot taking her up there. And for some reason, he agrees. So she gets in the chopper and they take off. And Jason is walking along and he comes across like an old mine, like a whole mine station. There's like railroad tracks and cars and all of that. And as he's walking down some rails looking for the bear pops out of one of the buildings and knocks Jason down. He shoots a pistol at the bear and starts like running away as it starts chasing him. And they kind of like play a game of cat and mouse while they're running around all the railroad cars and all of that. And then Jason runs into the opening of a mine. He grabs an axe and starts like running up a hill. It looks like he was running up a hill, but he kind of just ends up on like the entrance to this mine, I guess. And so the bear follows him, and Jason starts swinging away with the axe. Doesn't really hit him or anything. And then I guess he's standing on top of like a gas tank or something because the bear swipes at it, and then he starts getting sprayed with like gasoline or something. And then the bear just like kind of retreats to the inside of this mine. So Jason climbs down. They stare at each other for a while Jason has like flashbacks of all the attacks and then like runs into the mine after him. But he's also like having flashbacks to attacks that like he wasn't there for. So again, I don't know if they're trying to imply that these two have some sort of connection because Jason survived an earlier attack. Not made entirely clear. And when like he was trying to follow him in the mine, like this was near impossible to see on the version that I watched on YouTube. But I mean, basically, it's just Jason looking for the bear. We can kind of hear the bear growling or whatever. But they do eventually come out on the other side and reach the outside world again. And Jason continues to chase it. And they finally come face to face. And Jason swings the axe into the bear in slow-mo glory. But the bear swipes at Jason, knocking him down just as the chopper is flying down. Or flying just above, sorry. And Chrissy asks to be, like, put down so she can go and help him. The bear is chased, like, Jason to, like, the side of a cliff and is, like, swiping away at him. So the chopper lands, Chrissy gets out, and she tries to shoot it with a flare gun, but she can't figure out how it fucking works. So the bear comes and swipes her down. Jason runs up, and again, this is all done in, like, this obnoxious, dumb, slow motion, this whole sequence. But he grabs the flare and shoots the bear, lighting it on fire, and it falls off the cliff in like flaming glory and into the water. So it's finally dead. Chrissy wakes up and Jason goes over to her and she tells him like Bucky's gonna be all right, everything's fine. They hug. The chopper lands closer to them and then they kind of just ride off into the sunset. And that's the end of the movie. So I guess to start, like this movie actually wasn't bad. I would really, really like to see like an HD cleaned up version because this was like a VHS rip put onto YouTube. So like there's a lot of loss in quality here. Maybe even seeing just like an actual VHS copy would be a little bit better, but I still feel like those scenes that are dark would still be pretty dark. Don't know that I was a huge fan of the flashbacks. I think we really could have done without most of, if not all, of the flashbacks for the most part. I mean, some of them added a little bit of something, but for the most part, like, again, I feel like we really didn't need it. And the movie was long enough, too, that you probably could cut out most of them and still have, like, at least an hour and a half runtime, I think. And as I said throughout, I really would have liked to have seen, like, the Native American legend part of this explored a lot more instead of just, like, these brief glimpses and like kind of half explanations and just giving us little tiny bits and pieces. Some of the characters weren't written the greatest, like even just some of the dialogue was a little like why like when they're arguing in the camp when they're hunting the bear. I'm like, I know this conversation's going to happen, but just the way it was written just wasn't really well done. But overall, I think this movie has like the potential to be like a really decent remake. I think like you take this story, explore the native legend a little bit more, or like root it in an actual legend if this isn't actually one, and explore that. Or just explore like Jason's descent into madness over this bear, and make it about that and do less flashbacks. I think like that would actually be really good. But yeah, I would really like to see a cleaned up copy of this. Also get rid of the slow-mo. Very unnecessary for this movie. Just take it out. Overall, I'm going to give it a 2.5 stars. again, if I see a cleaner copy of this, I might raise that rating a little bit, because I could see myself giving this a higher rating, because I actually think it's a pretty well done movie. Like, I do really enjoy the story, and I can kind of see what they were going for. And we get like the taxidermied bear and like some of the cheesy shots like that. So like that's the kind of stuff I like. But yeah, overall I think 2.5 stars is pretty fair. But that's going to be it for me this week, guys. Thank you so much for listening. You know you can check me out on all the social medias. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Slasher, Blue Sky, all at Bucket of Chum or at Bucket of Chum Podcast. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Or give the whole podcast a review or rating wherever it is you're listening to your podcast. But I'll see you guys next time for even more Bucket of Chum.